Good morning. This is the class for first year BA. We are continuing with our search into Mahabharata, the great epic. We have seen some of the points already. The last class we said about the synopsis and then began with the older generations. As we can see, Mahabharata is a very great epic. So many characters come there. The main theme that is running through is about the clash between two groups, that is Kauravas and Pandavas. And then there are so many stories knit around this main plot. The main plot is the conflict between these two groups. They are cousins, and because of the rivalry between them, between the Pandavas and Kauravas, it leads them to a great battle that is called the Kurukshetra battle or Mahabharata. And that was the only way they could settle the issue, the question about the rightful heir to the kingdom of the Hastinapura. And finally, we have seen that the Pandavas win the war. But at what cost? And so many questions are there with regard to morality, righteousness, and all such things. And also we have seen how slowly and gradually the whole dynasty is going out of. That means slowly diminishing and just vanishing. Starting with the Kauravas, they were totally eliminated by the Pandavas. And now Pandavas become the rulers. Then after some years, some 30, 40 or 36 to 40 years, we see Krishna, who was an ally and in his hidden in his divine form, and he himself dies, and then his kingdom also is vanishing. When that happens, the Pandavas knew that it was time for them to quit from this world. And then they walk towards the North Pole, that is towards getting into heaven. And there we have seen one by one falling down and then giving up. So the entire story, the main plot was that is, what about these two, Kauravas and Pandavas, the fight between. But there are so many smaller plots which are knit around them. We are looking into the older generations, how this began. And then we have said about the king Janmejayas, and what happened to him. That he had a short marriage with goddess Ganga and had seared a son, Devadatta. And after that, who was called later Bhishma, a great figure, great warrior. And sometime after the birth of this Devavrata, later on Janmejaya goes on who becomes his their apparent heir. That means the son who was born to the king Janmejaya's ancestor Shantanu, the king of Hastinapura. That's what the story goes. Has short-lived marriage with goddess Ganga, not Janmejaya, but his ancestor Shantanu was the king of Hastinapura, had a short-lived marriage with goddess Ganga and seared a son, Devavrata, later called Bhishma, a great warrior. So the Bhishma was supposed to be the heir of the kingdom. But then what has happened? Shantanu goes on a great hunt, and there he meets Satyavati, and he falls in love with her, or he wanted to marry her. But the chief of the fishermen, whose daughter she was, refused to give her hand in marriage unless Shantanu promised at his deathbed that the sons born out of this wedlock will be made the rightful heir to the kingdom. And therefore there came a conflict between Bhishma or Devavrata and the would-be or the sons who will be maybe or the to Shantanu's marriage with Satyavati or the would-be children from Satyavati. So in order to make the situation peaceful, and maybe the Devavrata wanted his father to be happy, Shantanu to be happy, and therefore he relinquishes his right to the kingdom. But the chief fisherman or the father of Satyavati was not very sure whether the son of the king would be keeping up his promises or will be loyal to the promise which he has made. And therefore, Devavrata takes another vow of lifelong chastity to remain chaste all through life, not getting married. If only he gets married, then he is going to beget children, and then such a way the rightful heir to the kingdom will be there. So he made sure that the father of Satyavati made sure that there would be no progenies for Devavrata, and therefore the position for the children born out of this wedlock between Satyavati and Shantanu, the children would be safe and they will be the rightful heirs to the kingdom. And then Devavrata makes that vow, and he is taking a lifelong promise of celibacy. Now, Shantanu had two sons in Satyavati, Chitragada and Vichitravairya. But of them, Chitragada had a very uneventful life, so very short and uneventful life, whereas Vichitravairya became the youngest son, rules Hastinapura then. So the elder one had a very short life and uneventful life. Meanwhile, the king of Kasi arranges Swayamvara for her three daughters, Amba, Ambika, Ampalika. And then this Hastinapura or the Vichitravairya, or in order to arrange the marriage of the young Vichitravairya, Bhishma or what he had the name, that is earlier the Devavrata, who was later known as Bhishma, he attends the marriage of this Swayamvara. Remember that he himself has taken a lifelong vow of chastity. So he will not be getting married to anybody. But in order to arrange marriage of Vichitravairya, he attends the marriage or attends the Swayamvara program of the king of Kashi for her three daughters. They were the princes of Amba, Ambika and Ambalika. Uninvited. That means this family was, or this Hastinapura dynasty or the kingdom or king was not invited for this Swayamvara. So in a disguised or uninvited, Bhishma attends the Swayamvara program or the competition in order to get wives for Vichitravairya. Then what happens in the Swayamvara? He abducts all the three of them and brings them to Hastinapura. Now the oldest prince, Amba, she did not agree to marry the king of Hastinapura, that is Vichitravairya. Ambika and Ambalika, they agreed to. Then Amba wanted to marry the king of Shalva, whom Bhishma had defeated. So Bhishma, in a proxy way or impersonated or disguised and entered the competition and defeated all the others and abducted all the three of them and brought them to, that is Amba, Ambika and Ambalika, brought them to the Hastinapura kingdom as wives for Vichitravairya. Now among the three, the eldest Amba did not agree with her. So she wanted to marry king of Shalva. And then Bhishma said that she was free to go and marry the king of Shalva. But when she approached the king of Shalva, he refused to marry her, still ruminating over the defeat or the humiliation he experienced at the hands of Bhishma, who defeated him in the Swayamvara competition. And therefore she returns and tells Bhishma, now you marry me, because the king of Shalva refuses to marry me because you defeated him and he felt humiliated, and therefore you have to marry me. Then Bhishma tells her that he is not in a position to marry because of his lifelong vow of celibacy. Now she feels so very much hurt, and she accuses him because she tells him that you are responsible for my plight now. And then she becomes a bitter enemy of Bhishma. Later she is reborn to King Drupada as a Shikhandi or Shikhandini, and causes Bhishma's fall with the help of Arjuna in the battle of Kurukshetra. So we see how things are arranged in that way, or the story within the story what we are learning. So we have a little bit of history into what has happened to Hastinapura and the succession of that. From then it comes the next one, that is the Pandavas and Kauravas. So from Vichitravirya, and the succession comes to Pandavas and Kauravas. And who are these? That is, when Vichitravirya dies young, without any heirs. So Vichitravirya, as well as his elder brother, he also died in an uneventful life, and then Vichitravirya was the king of Hastinapura. Now, he died young, without any heirs. Then Satyavati asks her first son Vyasa to father children with the widows. And who are the widows? Ambika and Ambalika. The eldest one, Ambika, shuts her eyes when she sees Vichitravirya, and so her son Dhritarashtra is born blind. Ambika turns pale and bloodless upon seeing him, and thus her son Pandu is born pale and unhealthy. The term Pandu also may mean jaundiced. So due to the physical challenges of the first two children, Satyavati asks Vyasa to try again. However, Ambika and Ambalika sent their maids instead to Vyasa's room. Vyasa fathers a third son, Vidura, by the maid. He is born healthy and grows up to be one of the wisest characters in the Mahabharata. He serves as prime minister, that or Mahamantri, to King Pandu and King Dhritarashtra. So now we are coming to the next succession of Hastinapura, and that is the Pandu and Dhritarashtra. How these were born? Vichitravirya dies without any heirs. So two are left, that is widows, Ambika and Ambalika. Now Satyavati asks her first son, that is Vyasa, to bring up, or to Vyasa to father children with the widows. So for them it was important that the dynasty of succession should go on, and therefore Vyasa has to father Vyasa has to father children with the widows. And then these two, Ambika and Ambalika, they abhor the sight of seeing Vyasa. So Ambika shuts her eyes, and therefore the son born to her in that act Dhritarashtra is born blind. Then Ampalika, she turns pale, and therefore the child that is born, named as Pandu, became pale and unhealthy, or it's also another name for Pandu is also mean jaundiced. So both the sons had some physical defect, one born blind, one jaundiced or pale and unhealthy. Therefore, Satyavati asks Vyasa to try again. And this time, both of them, Ambika and Ampalika, they send their maid instead to Vyasa's room, and he fathers another child in the maid, and he is known as Vidura. And he becomes a very strong character in Mahabharata and rises up to become the prime minister for both Pandu as well as Dhritarashtra. So that is the succession story. Now, when the princes grew up, both of them, that is Dhritarashtra and Pandu, is about Dhritarashtra. When the princess has grown up, Dhritarashtra is about to be crowned by King Bhishma when Vidura intervenes and uses his knowledge of politics to assert that a blind person cannot be king. So the two sons who were born through, that is Vyasa in the widows of Vichitravirya, Ambika and Ampalika, one was born blind, Dhritarashtra, another one born unhealthy, that is Pandu. Now, as per the succession, the elder one is to be crowned king. So Bhishma was about to crown, once a princess had attained the age of succession to the throne, then Bhishma wanted to crown Dhritarashtra, the man born blind, as king. But then Vidura intervened and said, with his knowledge of politics, said, a blind man cannot be crowned as king because he is not in a position to see and really rule the people. And therefore the succession comes to Pandu. So this is how the kingship was transferred to the younger one, because the elder one was born blind. And therefore the younger one gets married and fathers, or he has got children. So children were born to him earlier than to Dhritarashtra. So this is how the kingship was transferred. The throne is then given to Pandu because of Dhritarashtra's blindness. Pandu marries twice, Kunti and Madri. So 2 times Pandu married, and Dhritarashtra marries Gandhari, a princess from Gandhara, who blindfolds herself so that she may feel the pain that her husband feels. Her brother Shakuni is enraged by this and vows to take revenge on the Kuru family. One day when Pandu is relaxing in the forest, he hears a sound and he shoots an arrow, and the arrow hits at one of the sage Kidampa, who curses him that if he engages in sexual act, he will die. That means Pandu had a curse on him. Pandu then retires to the forest along with his 2 wives, and his brother Dhritarashtra rules thereafter despite of his blindness. So story that's so far. So Dhritarashtra, Pandu has married twice, Kunti and Madri, and Dhritarashtra marries Gandhari from the kingdom of Gandhara, who blindfolds herself in order to feel on herself the pain of being blind. Shaguni, her brother, wanted to, or enraged by this, and vows to take revenge on Kuru family. And thus, what has followed is that one day when Pandu was relaxing in the forest, he hears a sound, he shoots an arrow, and it hits the sage Kidampa, who curses him, Pandu, that if ever he had any sexual intercourse, he would die then and there. So then he himself with his two wives retires into the forest, and then Dhritarashtra, despite of his blindness, continues to be the king. Or he takes up the, despite his blindness, he is the king. Pandu's older queen, that Kunti, she had received a boon from sage Durvasa that she could invoke any of the gods to get sons. So Kunti uses this bond to ask Dharma, the god of justice, Vayu, the god of wind, and Indra, the lord of the heavens, for sons. And since she uses this boon, she had 3 sons. And these were Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna were born to Kunti. She uses the special boon or which she had received from king or the sage Durvasa, that she could invoke any of the gods, and she invokes the god of Dharma, Vayu, and Indra to receive sons. And she had 3 sons, Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. Now, since and then she shares this. She gives birth to 3 sons, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, through these 3 gods. Kunti shares her mantra with the younger queen Madri, who bears twins, Nakula and Sahadeva. So there are 5 of them. Pandu had 2 wives, Kunti and Madri, and Kunti had 3 sons, Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. And Madri also uses this, shares this mantra or uses this mantra to receive 2 sons or the twins, Nagula and Sahadeva. So thus there are 5 sons for Pandu, received through for gods, or the invoking the gods through a special boon or mantra. So Nagula and Sahadeva were born to Madri. Then, however, Pandu and Madri indulge in sex, and there Pandu dies, and remorse, Madri also burns herself at the funeral pyre of her husband. So now all the 5 sons are left to the care of Kunti, the eldest queen. So that's how she comes under all the 5 sons come under the care of Kunti Devi. So Pandu had 2 wives, that is Kunti and Madri. Madri and Pandu dies once they engage in sexual act, because of the curse which Pandu had on him. And now all the 5 sons are under the care of Kunti. Now we shall turn to the other side. What is happening to Dhritarashtra? As of now, Dhritarashtra is the king, although he is blind. Now Pandu is dead and gone, and now Dhritarashtra. Now Dhritarashtra has 100 sons in Gandhari, all born after Yudhishthira, that is the elder son of Pandu. These are the Kaurava brothers, the eldest being Duryodhana and the second Dushasana. Other Kaurava brothers were Vikrama and Sukarna. So there are hundreds of them. Eldest being Duryodhana, Dushasana, and then the others, Vikarna and Sukarna. The rivalry and the enmity between these 2 groups, Kauravas and Pandavas. Kauravas belonging to, that is of the Dhritarashtra group, and Pandavas belonging to, that is of Pandu. Now Pandu died already. Only the elder queen Kunti left with 5 sons of Pandu, born to both of them, Kunti and Madri. So all the 5 sons come under the care of Kunti. Now for Dhritarashtra, 100 sons, so many. The eldest being Duryodhana, and then Dushasana, and following that Vikrama and Sukarna. Vikarna and Sukarna. So the rivalry between them, it goes on. That is between the Pandavas and Kaurava brothers, from their youth and into manhood, leads to Kurukshetra war. So both of them are claiming for, that is the dynasty, the kingship, and then only the war can settle that. So we have seen the synopsis how things stand up. So there is a lot of plot that is going on, and we are coming to different aspects of that, as we have seen. The story within the story, the Mahabharata, the great epic, is knit with so many subplots. Now we will see how the story is evolving. We shall see into how the planning or scheming of the Kaurava group goes on in order to eliminate the Pandavas. But we will also see that how gods intervene in order to save them, save the Pandavas from the scheming or the planning of the evil planning of the Kauravas. Lakshagrah, or the house of lack. After the death of their mother Madri and the father Pandu, the Pandavas and their mother Kunti returned to the palace of Hastinapur. So, who was supposed to be the king? Actually, Pandu was supposed to be, because he was on his death. Now, for time being, what was happening was that Dhritarashtra became king for some time. But once these children were grown up, they were able to, or reached the age of assuming the responsibility, then the kingship was given to the eldest son of Pandu, because he was the king and therefore it comes to, which was to the dislike of Duryodhana and party, or even Dhritarashtra himself. He wanted his sons to be the kings. But since, there was a lot of rivalry between them, plus trying to get or adjust in order so that Dhritarashtra wanted his sons to assume the throne, whereas the justice required that the elder son of Pandu be crowned king. So after the death of their mother Madri and their father Pandu, the Pandavas and their mother Kunti returned to the palace of Hastinapur. Yudhishthira is made crown prince by Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra is the elder brother among the two brothers of that is Vichitravairya's, or through Vyasa. Satyavati asked her son to father children through the widows of Vichitravairya, and these are the two princes who are born, that is Dhritarashtra and Pandu. And because of the curse which Pandu had on him, he dies young without any children, but then only the Kunti, who had a boon from the Durvasa, she makes use of this in order to get 3 sons. And thus we have seen that Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna were born to her, and then she shares this mantra or the boon with Madri, and she has got twins, Nagula and Sahadeva. So that is the story so far. Now these two were, or the 5 of them, grow under the care of Kunti, and later on they assume the responsibility of the kingdom of Hastinapur once they attain the age of responsibility. Then Dhritarashtra, under considerable pressure from his kingdom, made Yudhishthira the crown prince. Dhritarashtra wanted his son Duryodhana to become king, and lets his ambition get in the way of preserving justice. So although Dhritarashtra wanted his son, elder son, Duryodhana to be king, however the pressure from the kingdom made him to yield to the pressure and make Yudhishthira as the crown prince. Shakuni, Duryodhana and Dushasana plot to get rid of Pandavas. So once Yudhishthira was crowned as king, then there is the rival group planning and scheming in order to get them away, get rid of them. So Shakuni, Duryodhana and Dushasana, they come together, the evil minds come together to get rid of Pandavas. Shakuni calls the architect Purochana to build a palace of flammable materials like lac and ghee. He then arranges for the Pandavas and the queen mother Kunti to stay there as a house of lac, with the intention of setting it alight. However, the Pandavas were warned by their wise uncle Vidura, who sends them a miner to dig a tunnel. They were able to escape to safety and go into hiding. Back at Hastinapur, the Pandavas and Kunti are presumed dead. So this is what has happened or the plot that was being made in order to eliminate them. A house of lac means flammable material. So this is the trial they did, or one of the plans they did to execute or eliminate the Pandavas along with their mother Kunti. Now we come to the marriage of Draupadi. While they were in the hiding, that means from this plot they escaped and they went into hiding. But back in Hastinapur, what was the message, what was the news spread? That Pandavas dead and gone. The house got fire and all the 5 of them really got buried in that fire or burnt. So whilst they were in the hiding, the Pandavas learned of Swayamvara, which is taking place for the hand of the Panchala princess Draupadi. So Panchala kingdom and its princess Draupadi was being given in marriage through Swayamvara. The Pandavas then entered the competition in disguise as Brahmins. So they went in hiding and they disguised themselves as Brahmins. The task was to string a mighty steel bow and shoot a target on the ceiling, which is the eye of a moving artificial fish, while looking at its reflection in oil below. So it is not directly looking into the ceiling and then shooting the arrow, rather looking into the reflection of the fish, an artificial fish on the ceiling, its reflection in the oil below on the floor, and to shoot the arrow exactly at the eye of the fish. And most of the princes fail, many being unable even to lift up the steel bow. Arjuna succeeds, however. The Pandavas return home and inform their mother that Arjuna has won a competition and to look at what they have brought back, the prize which they have brought back in the competition. Without looking, Kunti asked them to share among all the 5 what Arjuna has won in the competition. On explaining the previous life of Draupadi, she ends up being the wife of 5 brothers. So that's how Draupadi becomes a wife of 5 sons of Pandu. That is a marriage of Draupadi taking place. Now we are looking into the building up the story or the plot which is going on. So there was an attempt on the life of Pandavas, the sons of Pandu and Kunti herself. They escape and live in hiding Then they in disguise join in the Swayamvara of Draupadi, king of the princess of Panchala, and there she is won by Arjuna, and Kunti asks Arjuna to share the prize with all the five equally, and thus Draupadi becomes the wife of all the five. Indraprastha. After the wedding, the Pandava brothers are invited back to Hastinapur. The Kuru family elders and relatives negotiate and broker a split of the kingdom, broker a split of the kingdom, with the Pandavas obtaining a new territory. Yudhishthira has a new capital built for his territory at Indraprastha. Neither the Pandavas nor the Kaurava side are happy with the arrangement, however. So Indraprastha, how this come to the establishment? Once the marriage with Draupadi was over, it was known that the Pandavas are alive, and therefore they are called back to the kingdom of Hastinapur, and negotiations are going on, and there is a division. Certain amount of portion of the kingdom for Pandavas and the other for the Kauravas. And thus, the portion which is received by the Pandavas, they have their palace, or Yudhishthira has a new capital built in his territory at the Indraprastha. Neither the Pandavas nor Kauravas are happy with the arrangement, however. Shortly after this settlement of the kingdom, Arjuna elopes with and then marries Krishna's sister Subhadra. Yudhishthira wishes to establish his position as king. He seeks Krishna's advice. Krishna advises him, and after due preparation and elimination of some opposition, Yudhishthira carries out the Rajasuya Yajna ceremony. He is thus recognized as preeminent among kings. Rajasuya Yajna ceremony, that is at the advice of Krishna, Yudhishthira performs it. The Pandavas have a new capital built, new palace built for them by Maya the Danava. They invite the Kaurava cousins to Indraprastha. So now a new palace is built, Maya Mahal or Maya and Danava. They invite their Kaurava cousins to Indraprastha. Duryodhana walks around the palace and mistakes a glossy floor for water and will not step in. After being told of his error, he then sees a pond and assumes it as not water but falls in. Draupadi laughs at him and ridicules him, saying that this is because of his father Dhritarashtra. A son of a blind man also is blind. So that's what Draupadi teases him, and then Duryodhana takes an oath to avenge this humiliation. He then decides to avenge his humiliation. So the Kaurava brothers were invited to Indraprastha to have a look at the new palace. And there in the glossy tiles, Duryodhana mistakes the glossy tile for water and would not step in. When he was told about his mistake, and the next time when he sees a pond, thinks that it is not water but falls into that. And this makes Draupadi too burst into laughter and tells that the son of a blind man is also blind. This taunts Duryodhana, and he wanted to avenge this humiliation at an opportune time. Now comes the dice game. So there was a few attempts which were going on in order to eliminate Pandavas, but they are all the more becoming stronger and stronger. Now they have the kingdom of Hastinapura is divided, and the Pandavas have got a new capital, and a palace was built, and they are continuing their rule in that portion or the divided kingdom. Neither side is happy, neither Pandavas nor Kauravas are happy. And on building the new palace, they invited the Kauravas to come and visit, and this is what happened, or the humiliation underwent by the Duryodhana, and he wanted to avenge that. So that's how it happened. Now the dice game. Shakuni, Duryodhana's uncle, now arranges a dice game. So all the time the scheming is going on, planning is going on in order to eliminate Pandavas, because both sides is not happy. Although the kingdom is divided and one portion is given to Pandavas and one portion is given to Kauravas, and with their own capital, still some kind of rivalry that is going on, or dissatisfaction among both the groups. So therefore what happens here, again Duryodhana, Dushasana, Shakuni, they are plotting. They are trying to make some plans to eliminate the Pandavas. So Shakuni, Duryodhana's uncle, now arranges a dice game, playing against Yudhishthira with loaded dice. Yudhishthira loses all his wealth, then his kingdom. He then even gambles his brothers, himself, and finally his wife into servitude. So this is what happened in the dice game, totally rigged or manipulated. So the Kauravas saw to it that they will win the match, and then they had a plan somehow to send them to exile. So therefore Yudhishthira had a weakness in playing or dice game, and this the Kauravas took advantage of. And he was challenged to this playing the game of dice, and then Yudhishthira loses all his wealth, the kingdom, himself, his brothers, and he gambles with his brothers, himself, and his own wife, that is Draupadi, into servitude. The jubilant Kauravas insults the Pandavas in their helpless state, and even try to disrobe Draupadi in front of the entire court. But her honor is saved by Krishna, who miraculously creates a length of clothes to replace the ones being removed. And this is what we see, the intervention of Krishna in saving the honor of Draupadi. So they wanted, that is, Duryodhana, Dushasana and Shakuni, they had a plan or schemed, and they manipulated the game of dice and they won. And now they started humiliating the Pandavas, including their common wife Draupadi, and they are trying to humiliate her by disrobing her in front of the whole court which was present there. Now none of the Pandavas could move a finger, and therefore Krishna comes to the assistance of Draupadi, making the length of the cloth unending. So then Dhritarashtra, Bhishma and the other elders are aghast at the situation, but Duryodhana is adamant. So Duryodhana wanted by all means, although the elders, that is his own father Dhritarashtra, Bhishma and other elders are aghast or taken aback at what was happening. But Duryodhana is adamant, and there is no place for two crown princes in Hastinapura. Against his wishes, Dhritarashtra orders for another dice game. The Pandavas are required to go into exile for 12 years, and in the 13th year must remain hidden. If discovered by the Kauravas, they will be forced into exile for another 12 years. So the dice game was rigged, then another game is challenged, or against the wishes of Dhritarashtra, against his wishes, that is wishes of Duryodhana, another dice game is ordered. And the bet is that, or the punishment would be this: the one who wins the dice game, the losing party will have to go in exile for 12 years, and then 1 year they have to live in the society unrecognized by the opposite party. So 13 years altogether. So at the end of the 13th year they could. But if they are found out, then another 12 years in the forest life or exile, and 1 year again unrecognized, live in the society. If they are found out, then starts another 12. So the plan was that the Pandavas will never ever return to the kingdom. Duryodhana did not want. He was adamant, saying that there is no place for two crown princes in the same kingdom, only one. And therefore he wanted to get rid of Pandavas forever. And that was the scheme or the plan. So another game of dice was called for, and then the punishment was this: 12 years of exile, 1 year living in the society unrecognized by the opposite party, or this is equally applicable for both. If Pandavas win, Kauravas have to go. If Kauravas win, Pandavas have to go. So that was the competition, or the bet that was placed in the game of dice. Now the exile and return. The Pandavas spent 13 years in exile, or 12 years in exile. 1 year they lived unknown in the society, or not recognized by the or not found by the opposite party, that's Kauravas. The Pandavas spent 13 years in exile. Many adventures occurred during this time. So Mahabharata is again, that story is knit again further what happens these 12 years. So 1 year, that is, they were the kings, and then they were sent in exile. Then what happens? So it's a long time, 12 long years. What happens there then? So the adventures occur during this time. They also prepare alliances for the possible future conflict. They spend their final years in disguise in the court of Virata, and are discovered just after the end of the year. At the end of their exile, they try to negotiate and return to Indraprastha. So the exile, the punishment was for 13 years, at the end of which the Pandavas return and claim for the kingdom. And they want to return to Indraprastha. However, this fails, as Duryodhana objects that they were discovered while in hiding, and that no return of their kingdom was agreed. War becomes inevitable. So therefore, there was no other goal than to end in war. Because Duryodhana was adamant that at no cost the kingdom would be handed over to them. So what is the only solution now? So many negotiations, or they were trying to negotiate through many important persons. Nothing worked. Everything failed. And therefore, the only answer was that of the war. That is Kurukshetra war. So that is the next one which we'll be going into.